today I'm going to be doing a really quick tutorial on combining soft body physics and geometry nodes to just quickly animate a couple of wiggly chemicals, and I'm going to be demonstrating on ATP in specific. So this method was adopted by Matthew Batticio. You can follow him on Twitter. He has some amazing works on there, and we're going to be using Pymol and Avogadro. So here's a basic quick sketch of what I'm about to do. I'll explain it in detail as we're going through it. First off, we need to use Avogadro to export a molecule as a PDB format. So what I'm going to do is just import by chemical name ATP, and there you can see it in all of its glory. And next I'm going to use Pymol to prep the STL after I have exported that PDB. So follow that command. Now we're going to adjust the stick radius, so just follow the command that I set at the very bottom. And you can set it to whatever radius you want. The thinner the better, so that we have to do less work when we eventually port this to Blender. So that's what I just did right there. You're going to want to export that as an STL. Make sure you name everything. And we're going to move on to going back into Blender and adding in some soft body physics to this. So I'm going to import my ATP molecule, and you can see it in all of its ATP glory. And you'll notice that there are additional vertices that don't correspond to actual atoms that are in the structure. So what we're going to do is we're going to merge vertices by distance. Make sure not to go down too far. As you see, you accidentally get rid of the vertices that you want to maintain. So in this case, I'm just going to manually select all of the vertices that don't have an atom corresponding to their location. This could certainly get to be a big deal if you're working with larger molecules, but with here, it's not too bad. So I'm just going to dissolve those vertices. Don't delete them, because that'll delete the bonds. And just double checking everything to make sure that I have all of the vertices that I need and no redundancies. Alright, so I'm going to go back into the main panel and just style it to where I want it to be located. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select random vertices and check off additional ones that I think are going to add a little bit more stability. So basically these are going to be vertices that are pinned in place, and that's what I'm doing right here. I'm assigning them to a group that pins them. So I'm going to apply some soft body physics. Make sure you select goal and select the vertices that you just assigned to a group. And those ones will just stay static in place, and every other vertice that was not assigned to that group is going to just flop around, as if it were like elastic or rubber or something. So here I added an empty, and I'm going to adjust that rotation, and I'm basically just going to make the ATP molecule copy that rotation of the empty. So it'll follow it as it goes, and here I see that the rotation didn't apply, so I'm just going to adjust the rotation so that it is in the placement that I originally wanted it to be in. Making sure to set that rotation interpolation mode over to linear, so it doesn't have that easing in or out. And the physics can be weird when you adjust something midway through the calculations. Like, it'll freak out for a little bit, but if you just bring it back to the beginning and then replay it, it should adjust to whatever settings you've just applied. Keep in mind that you're going to want to bake all of the dynamics to your cache so that any weird physics issues are more precisely resolved by the program. So here I just added a couple of force fields to add a little bit more chaos to my simulation here, a little bit of controlled chaos. And you'll notice that I'm doing a lot of replaying. There's just a lot of adjusting, a lot of playing around with the settings. because I'm still not 100% familiar with how soft body physics works in Blender. So I just mess around with the values until I end up with a simulation that I like the movement of. So I'm just gonna continually play around with this, set up the camera so that I can more accurately view how this is going to look in the final product. Unless you understand how soft body physics works intimately, I think that it's best to just play around and see what settings looks the best. You can see I'm running into a very strange issue here where it looks like the ATP molecule gets kind of caught at a certain point. So I just removed one of the force fields and let that play to see how it would resolve itself. Adjust the strength, the flow of the force field as well if I need to. And you'll notice that I came across a weird artifact feature here where it looks like the molecule is running into a wall of some sort. So I fixed that by shortening the animation so it doesn't come to that point. But if I took a little more time, I'm sure I could have figured out what was wrong. So at this point, we're going to add some geometry nodes to our simulation. And this is the fun part, I think, in my opinion, because we get to add a little bit more dimension and we get to add back that more iconic stick and ball shape to our molecule without necessarily sacrificing the time it'll take to render all of it. So add in a mesh to curve and a curve to mesh so that we can unlock the curve profile feature. And I'm going to set a curve circle to be the curve profile. And I'm making sure to add in a math node to divide to have more fine control of the radius of said circle. Here I am just adjusting it. In the final product that I eventually come out with, I have thicker bonds, but here they're fairly thin. You can set them to whatever you like. I'm going to add in a join geometry at the very end here and create an instance on points node and add that to the join geometry. And I'm going to add in a UV sphere as my instance and do a very similar thing to have finer control over the radius of the UV sphere here. I don't want them to be too big. I don't want them to be too small. So here I'm just adjusting the size of my instanced atoms and gonna set to shade smooth so that it has a shocker, more smooth appearance in the render. Here I'm just adding the material, setting the material to each of the elements of our molecule. Make sure to label everything as you go. Sometimes I don't follow my own advice, but it makes things 10 billion% more easy to go back and adjust when you do so. So here in the shading tab, I'm just going to set my basic materials for the molecule. So here I'm making the bond material like a glassy kind of material, and in retrospect, not really the best idea. You don't want your bonds to be difficult to see, but I don't know. I was just messing around and I wanted to see what it would look like in a stylized glass material. So my general setup for making glass is to have 3 different glass shaders, all connected by add shaders, and setting each of the colors to be RGB, and then offsetting the index of refraction off by, 0.1, so it gives a more dramatic refractive effect. Here I also added the HDRI, of which you can find it for free at several different websites. I'm going to attach those in the description. And I tried to add a kind of marbly material over to the atoms, but you'll see it. I'm not a big fan of it at the very end. I end up changing it to a different material type. So you see me just finagle around with the settings here. And here I'm just going to be continually setting up the scene, adding just a basic plane, going over to edit mode, gonna go over to line mode, extrude that edge over there to the top, and then beveling out the resulting corner crease so that it's a bit more smooth. I'm just going to take a little peek at what it looks like in rendered view, and here I'm in the wrong engine, so I'm going to switch over from that over to cycles just to get a general idea of how this is going to look at the very end. Adjusting the scene as I'd like it to be. Here I'm going to add in a light texture. So this is from a texture pack that I actually had to purchase on, what was it, the Blender Market. And it has some very interesting animated light effects. I chose a non-animated one for this one specifically, but it adds a little bit more dimension to my scenes, in my opinion. Certainly you can just use regular lighting, free lighting. I just wanted to play around with this pack. I'll also add that to the description down below. Just adjusting the setting of the spotlight as I go. And there's a lot of editing in between here where I adjusted the materials, so don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. But I'm just letting this render out so that I can play around with it in the compositing tab. As always, add in a viewer node so that we can see what we're actually doing. Typically I add a glare, and I'm going to change that over from streaks to fog glow. It looks like it doesn't really do much here, so it's fine. It's typically what I do though. I'm going to add in a lens distortion, distort down to 0.02, and my favorite part, doing the color balancing. So I'm just going to adjust the shadows, midtones, and highlights until I get a look that I am quite pleased with. And I believe I stick with this one. There might be a couple of minute changes that I make. So I decided that I didn't really like the shiny marble material that I added to the atom instances. So I changed it over to a more DVD-esque material that I have in my asset pack over here. You can certainly use whatever material you want. It's just that this one looked very shiny. I just wanted to play around with it. I would definitely not use this very specific animation in a teaching setting because it is a little unclear, but it was just really fun to make at the end of the day. Render out that image again just to make sure it looks good, and here is the resulting product. I made an additional one as well with the bonds thicker in a different color so that you could see it a lot clearer, and I'm quite a bit more pleased with that. So if you like that tutorial, please follow me for more. You can also follow me on Twitter. Follow Matthew Batticio because he creates amazing works. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Bye!